Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with an in-depth introduction to Mayakashi, or as I like to call them, Mayakashi. I'll admit, this was a theme that I wasn't too keen on when they first came out in Hidden Summoners, after reading just a few of the cards and realizing that they locked themselves into the Mayakashi extra deck monsters. I didn't really give them a serious chance. As a creator who likes seeing what you can combine different archetypes with, even if they're off-the-wall concepts, this wasn't really my cup of tea, right? Because you're locking yourself into a theme. It's like, what creative thing can you do with something that locks itself into itself? But after looking at them, and a lot of the zombie support that came out in the past year, most notably the zombie horde structure deck that came out with 𝕮𝖆𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘 and the likes, all which go right into your main deck, conveniently enough, I gave this thing a chance, and I ended up finding that this became one of my favorite bad, quote-unquote, decks to actually look at. So this is a cool theme, not in terms of just the playstyle, because it is a pretty cool playstyle as we'll discuss today, but also in terms of the lore. Anyone who knows about Japanese folklore may recognize these guys as some of the yokai. These are creatures that range anywhere from mischievous to downright evil, but they disguise themselves in human forms, which you see represented in the 6 main deck monsters here, and then as we'll see in the introduction down the line, they unleash themselves and show their true forms in the extra deck monsters that represent these same 6 monsters. So very cool concept all around, and I am very excited to show this theme with you guys. So hopefully after this, if you were a doubter like myself, you'll at least look at these and give them a chance. You know, they're a pretty interesting archetype. Are they amazing? No, but I was surprised with what they were able to do, especially given some context. If you want to see a deck list using them, feel free to click the iCard in the top right hand corner where I've linked an example or two of my decks that involve Mayakashi, but otherwise this is just the introduction to the core. So let's go and introduce Mayakashi. Just like how I like to build my decks, the first thing we're going to cover is the core engine for the theme that allows it to do what the theme is good at. And we're starting off with the power spell enabler, Mayakashi Return. This normal spell card is essentially Foolish Burial rolled into reinforcement of the army, or Rhoda. It is a hard once per turn, and you can't fetch another copy of Return using this card, but essentially lets you take any Mayakashi card from your deck and either put it into your hand or send it to the graveyard. So already off to a phenomenal start, and we're kind of allowed to do this because of the balancing act that Konami implemented into these cards. Since all of your main deck monsters prevent you from summoning non-Mayakashi cards other than Daki, who basically just stops you from using non-Mayakashi cards the turn you activate her effect, you're basically locked out of using them for dumb non-Mayakashi plays. And so Return ends up giving you a little bit of a bonus in its utility, allowing you to do 2 things for the price of 1 card. So what are we doing with that card? We're probably searching out Hajun, the Winged Mayakashi. This card is essentially your reborn, or excuse me, not reborn Tengu, though it is a Tengu. It is your tour guide from the underworld for the strategy. Upon normal or special summon, you can special summon 1 Mayakashi monster from your deck, except another copy of Hajun. It is a hard once per turn, and while you control Hajun, you can't special summon non-Mayakashi monsters from your extra deck. But it's important to note that, again, this monster will only restrict you while he's still on the field. If you get him off the field, you can summon non-Mayakashi monsters, which means you're able to go ahead and go for generic zombie, Link, Synchro, and other cards as well. But this card is awesome because now with Mayakashi Return at 3 and Hajun at 3, you have 6 ways to get your plays started to bring out a monster of your choosing. And the first pick that we have is going to be one of usually 2 copies of Daki, the Graceful Mayakashi. This thing is based off of the Kitsune, you know, the 9-tailed fox that everyone knows and loves. It's a level 2 fire zombie tuner with 1,000 attack and 0 defense, which is, you know, pretty good for a zombie monster. Having that 0 defense does give you some extra reach in accessing this card. You can only control 1 Daki at a time, but anytime a Mayakashi monster is special summoned from your extra deck while this card's in the graveyard, except during the damage step, you could special summon this card, and it's not a hard once per turn. The only limitation you have on this is the turn you special summon Daki from the graveyard with this effect, you cannot summon non-Mayakashi monsters from your extra deck, so she's the one monster who actually locks you out even beyond when she's resting on the field, but it's for good reason, because as you'll see here, if you're able to start off with a copy of Hajun or Return in order to go ahead, normal this, and special summon your Daki, you have a level 2 tuner monster in conjunction with a level 1 non-tuner monster, and what that lets you do, of course, is synchro summon for level 3, and I'm not going to talk about 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓's effect quite yet, because the whole point of this strategy is he has no effect until he comes back, which I'll get to in just a moment. Daki, however, summons herself because we just summoned a monster from our extra deck with Mayakashi in its name, and that means, of course, level 2 plus level 3 equals level 5 for 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓, the poisonous Mayakashi, and again, we continue looping through from 5 to 7 up to 𝕮𝖔𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙, the winged Mayakashi, which is, of course, Hajun's revealed form. We then go up to the level 9 Yoko, who is Daki's revealed form, and then Daki, or I guess Yoko and Daki, combine to become 𝕮𝖓𝖇𝖑𝖊, the skeletal Mayakashi, at a mighty 3,300 attack, 2,600 defense. Still no effect yet until you bring him back from the graveyard, but not an issue because you got this card for literally a normal summon, a 3,300 monster on the board, who then has some pretty interesting abilities. This card says that if a link monster in your possession happens to die by your opponent's card effect or battle while this is on your field, or rather when this card is in your graveyard, you can revive this card from your graveyard by banishing any other zombie from your graveyard, and then you trigger his secondary effect. And the turn he's special summoned from the graveyard for any reason, it could be through his own effect, could be through generic zombie support, you're able to go ahead and protect him from being affected by any other card effect. So a 3,300 beat stick that floated into existence that also cannot be affected by other card effects, that's pretty scary, especially in a zombie deck where you're able to manipulate when you claim that ability. Then, let's say 𝕮𝖓𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 dies, right? You get to then summon your Yoko from the graveyard, and this 2,900 attack representation of Yusuke from Persona basically is able to go and destroy a monster opponent controls at resolution without targeting, which is a pretty mighty effect indeed. If Yoko falls, you're able to go ahead and revive your 𝕮𝖔𝖓 by banishing another zombie monster. Just following it, you go down one link in the chain, and 𝕮𝖔𝖓 lets you kill a Speller Trap, which you may expect from the wind attribute that this card has. It's very consistent with what Yu-Gi-Oh does in this sense. Then 𝕮𝖔𝖓 dies, you get to go for 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓, and this card is a 2,000 attacker, 1,800 defender, who says you can force both players to mill the top 3 cards of their deck. Could be useful, could be a double-edged sword though in terms of helping your opponent set up. So as long as you have enough of a vice grip on the game, you should be safe to claim that mill as extra resources, but do be mindful of when you use it. Whereas the other effects are just downright, why wouldn't you use them when you have the opportunity? This one can be a little bit more of a risk, so just watch out for that. And once the spider falls, you're able to go for 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓, the wheeled Mayakashi, who is basically a wagon with 2,100 defense, and when he's special summoned from the graveyard, you can activate the effect to make it so none of your monsters can be destroyed by battle for the rest of that turn, which is a pretty good way to say, stop, I'm not dying this turn, at least through battle. Is it a perfect strategy? No, these cards have to be destroyed in order to claim their effects, so anything spinning them away, shuffling them, banishing them, whatever, will end up not triggering them. But they're very resilient nonetheless because they take away one of your opponent's basic in-game mechanics of getting rid of them through battle or basic destruction, and then they float and replace themselves, and of course, again, you can manipulate them from the graveyard with your own abilities in order to continue making your plays even better. From here, I do want to mention that anytime you climb through this chain, you do have technically a synchro monster and another Mayakashi monster. And with 2 Mayakashi monsters, it is possible to combine them into their only on-theme link monster, Yuki-onna, the ice Mayakashi. So Emilia here is a water zombie with 1,900 attack linked to, who does just need any 2 Mayakashi monsters, and you can only control one of them. Darn, I honestly wished you'd be able to like cheese multiples of this card into play and like climb into like a Boral Sword or something dumb, switch Daki to defense position, you know, just end the game. But alas, they kind of blocked the ability to use that. All of your synchro monsters, by the way, also do have a you can only control one of them at a time clause, and so this is very consistent with that ability, or I guess restriction, just so you can't have, you know, two big skeleton boys and then take your opponent down with two mighty swings. But this card has effects that aren't really the best, so typically, whereas I'll play two of each of the synchro monsters to be able to climb through the Daki chain twice, Yuki Onna I like playing one of just so I can tech in some other cards in my extra deck. Her effects aren't bad, they just don't do anything in particular for the theme. When she's pointing to a synchro monster, your opponent's monsters can't target this card for attack, so I guess she protects herself, so you would be thinking, okay, well, what does she generate for you by staying on the field? Absolutely nothing. When a synchro monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this is on the field, or rather if, so you can't miss timing, you can revenge target one of your opponent's monsters on the field, or your own if you are so inclined, and have its attack and defense for the turn. So it's not even a permanent effect, and it's only a revenge kill if your Mayakashi card dies. Maybe in the future we'll get some like field spell or something that allows you to make your opponent kill your Mayakashi cards that you choose, but until we get some sort of effect like that, Yuki Onna's not really going to be doing a ton, especially considering that Revenge Have effect is only usable once per turn. So like you can't even just ram your monsters through your opponent's cards and keep having them and whatever. It's basically, you have this here because it opens up 2 zones, and it is very accessible to the point that it's worth playing at least the 1 copy. All thanks to a single copy of Shafu, the wheeled Mayakashi. This card is another main deck guy. He's the real, or I guess the fake form of 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, the chariot wagon dude here. But essentially, this card says when it's normal or special summoned, you could target 1 Mayakashi monster in your graveyard, accept a copy of Shafu, and special summon it in defense position but negate its effects. You can only use the effect of Shafu once per turn, and you can't summon any non-Mayakashi monsters if you control this guy, as per all of the other main deck Mayakashi monsters. But essentially, what you're able to do with this card is, yeah, you can't bring back Emilia, yeah, you can't go ahead and use the effects of your synchro monsters because you negate them, but you do have some big bodies that come onto the field, lets you skip some levels in the chain if you do need to build up once again. But I think the biggest reason to play the single copy of this card is, suppose you end up with a start of Mayakashi Return with Hajun. You know, when you play 3 of each of these, it's not that unreasonable that you'll open with this every once in a while. Essentially, Mayakashi Return is going to send a copy of your Daki to the graveyard, which means now when you normal summon your Hajun, you're special summoning Shafu from the graveyard, or from the deck rather, in order to go and special summon Daki back from your graveyard. And now with these cards here, you can take Daki and Shafu in order to go for your Yuki Onna play. But since Yuki Onna is still an extra deck monster, even though she's not a synchro, you do get Daki back, and now you have a link monster in addition to your serial synchro summons. You go 5 times, go into your 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘, and then now Yuki Onna is protected as well. So for what it's worth, it's a 1-card addition to the deck that allows you to establish 2 new chains of synchros instead of just 1. So there's no reason not to play the 1 copy of it if your deck space isn't like extremely tight and you're doing some like really competitive, I think that's an oxymoron with this theme, but competitive shenanigans, or you know, really trying to build up what you're doing with the main deck here. In the next section here, I do want to talk about some cards in the Mayakashi theme that kind of tie this together with other zombie support, and this is what really made me want to play this theme. Starting off, we have 3 copies of Yuki Musume, the Ice Mayakashi. This is the card that I looked at. It's the, you know, humanoid version of Yuki Onna, if she weren't humanoid enough, I guess. The child pretending to be human version, and this card is absolutely nuts for this theme. Water, level 1 zombie with 0 attack, 1900 defense, and it says if you control a Mayakashi card other than a copy of this, while this card is in your hand or graveyard, you could special summon this card for free once per turn, and then send any zombie from your deck to the graveyard. This is a silly effect. Yes, as you may expect, it locks you out of non-Mayakashis while you control this card, but again, just use it up and you're fine. But that ability to send a zombie to the graveyard lets you seamlessly integrate the zombie horde cards with this theme, and it just allows you to get so much extra mileage out of this. In addition, anytime you have something like your Hajun play, you know how I said, oh, Shafu lets you go for your Daki play. Well, suppose you're able to go for Hajun and you're able to special summon out your Daki. If you're holding on to Yuki Musume, you actually have the exact same overall setup where now you have another monster you can go for Yuki Onna, and Yuki Musume sending something to the graveyard in order to get things rolling as well. Maybe generic zombie support, maybe more copies of their cards. Whatever it may be you want to do, Yuki Musume allows it, and this card is basically the glue that ties this theme together with every other zombie theme you may want to combine it with. So basically a creator's dream, and that's why I ultimately ended up giving this deck a shot. From here, I want to talk about two staples that are obvious but very important. Foolish Burial lets you go ahead and yard Daki and combines nicely with other cards for the zombie theme that we'll get to in just a second here. And 1-for-1 is extremely powerful in letting you yard Dakis that you may have drawn in your hand and get Hajuns directly from your deck, because Hajun triggers even if you special summon him from their graveyard anywhere, and so you effectively have another copy of Hajun to get your plays started. And again, it can combine with other zombie support as well. Another good card for the theme that goes with the Foolish Burial and with Yuki Musume is 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, which basically lets you banish itself from the graveyard to special summon a zombie type monster from your graveyard. This card is absolutely staple in zombies to some degree. Usually I play 2, maybe 3, depending on space in the deck, but you definitely want to consider the Shiranui Solitaire engine that not only helps you access 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, but Shiranui Solitaire is usually used as a lone Fire Blossom to special summon your Unizombie, a 0 defense zombie tuner from your deck. While Unizombie itself is awesome in this strategy because you can discard your Dakis, you can go ahead and immediately yard either 𝕮𝖆𝖑𝖊 or Daki directly from your deck in exchange for not being able to attack with non-zombies for the turn. Solitaire is able to fetch Daki directly from your deck because remember, Shiranui Solitaire lets you summon a zombie monster that's a tuner with 0 defense, and wouldn't you know it, Daki, the graceful Mayakashi, just happens to have 0 defense and is a tuner monster. So this engine is great. You're already using it for synchro plays. It's a zombie support engine to get a ton of resources, and it fits seamlessly with the Daki of the Mayakashi as well. So very powerful way of improving your arsenal. And then from here, the last 2 cards that I like playing in the deck are usually 1 copy each of Mayakashi Winter, the continuous spell, and Mayakashi Metamorphosis, the normal trap. So Winter is an interesting card. It serves as kind of like a debuff while it's on the field. Monsters your opponent controls all lose 100 attack and defense for each of your Mayakashi monsters with different names in your graveyard. But the real reason you play it is because of the hard once per turn abilities that follow in the bullet points. The first one is you can send this card along with 1 Mayakashi monster you control to the graveyard in order to draw 1 card. Now that doesn't trigger any of your Mayakashi monster's abilities, unfortunately, so you may be thinking, well, why on earth would I give up a spell card and one of the monsters I've summoned in order to draw 1 card? It's a terrible upstart goblin, right? Well, you gotta remember, even when you're done synchro climbing, you still get a Daki for free, and Daki can turn into a draw off of a searchable one of Mayakashi Winter, which I think is actually a pretty good way of getting, capitalize on your free Daki, because otherwise she's just gonna be sitting there, you're locked out of Mayakashi monsters, or non-Mayakashi monsters rather, for the rest of the turn, locked into the Mayakashi, and at that point you can't really do much with that card other than use it as a chump blocker as in defense position, or just get a free draw, and that draw could get you a fresh card that you need to further advance your game state. On top of that, the next turn, or if you just discarded this off of Unizombie or something, you can banish this card along with the zombie monster in your graveyard in order to target a Mayakashi in your grave and special summon it, and that does trigger its ability. So essentially, by playing 1 copy of this in tandem with a 3 Mayakashi return, you now have 4 copies to access this card and can at will, to some degree, get a monster reborn off for your Mayakashi effects, and when that turns into a destroy one of your opponent's cards, or make it so you have an invincible level 3300 beater. It's a pretty good deal, and so I like playing the one copy. I will admit, when I first looked at this second effect, I misread it and thought it said you can banish this card on the field and a zombie in your graveyard to revive something, and that would be nuts. It was my instant replacement for Book of Life, and I was playing 2 copies. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But the problem with it is worded in a strange way, but it means that it needs to be in the graveyard along with the other cards. So unless you have a discard outlet readily available, which you don't necessarily have within the core Mayakashi cards, Winter ends up being something that you may just want one of, so that when you have the luxury of setting it up, you have the big payoff for very little overall investment. And then the last card here in the Mayakashi theme that we play is Mayakashi Metamorphosis. This trap lets you discard any card from your hand, so load up your Mizukis or whatever, in order to target one of your Mayakashi monsters that's either banished or in your graveyard and special summon it. Your opponent cannot target it with effects for the rest of the turn, which is pretty solid, and you can't special summon non-Mayakashi monsters for the rest of the turn either. You can only activate one of these per turn. So the way I see this is you do banish your own Mayakashi cards quite a lot in order to get the next chain down back from the graveyard. So that means you can recover your banished guys so that they're not gone forever, and doing it as a trap card is pretty solid. You don't get their effects, however, because they're not summoned back from the graveyard, but Metamorphosis does have the ability to summon back from your graveyard if you have everything loaded up, and that means this trap card basically becomes discard 1 card, special summon a 2900 body, and kill one of your opponent's monsters as a quick effect that's not chainable because it's in resolution. Or Tengu can come out, kill a spell or trap. You can go ahead and summon out 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓, the wheeled guy, and then make it so your opponent's not able to go and kill you that turn. So basically, the fact that this card is a trap card that literally metamorphosizes into the monster of your choice and claims that ability, I think it's worth playing the 1 copy because you have full access to it thanks to, again, 3 copies of Mayakashi Return. Gives a little extra flavor and reach to the deck, and gives you an on-theme trap card that unlocks your deck's potential. Then the last 2 cards I want to talk about are the last 2 main deck monsters that did not make the cut for various reasons, and I'll talk about them. So we'll actually go this way because of levels. Tsukahagi, the Poisonous Mayakashi, is a level 2 tuner as well. It's an Earth with 0 attack, 2000 defense, and it's the humanoid version of Tsuchigumo, the Poisonous Mayakashi, the spider one, the level 5. You can only control one of these at a time, and if a Mayakashi monster in your possession except a copy of Tsukahagi has been destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card's in your graveyard, you could special summon this card. You can't special summon non-Mayakashi monsters the turn you activate this effect from your extra deck. And the problem with this theme is it's so reliant on your opponent. When you already have Daki coming back infinitely, why would you play a subpar, reliant on your opponent, non-independent, pathetic dude like this? There's no reason to play this guy, is basically the thing. Maybe there can be support in the future that makes this more playable, but right now, there's no incentive to play a worse version of Daki that doesn't combo with any of your own plays. So that's why Tsukahagi has not made the cut. And Yasha, the Skeletal Mayakashi, is the human monk version of Gashizakuro, mighty level 11 with 3300 attack. He's got a beefy 2000 for a level 5, and it says you can discard one other Mayakashi monster to special summon this card from your hand. You can only use this effect of Yasha once per turn, and you can't special summon monsters from your extra deck except Mayakashi monsters. So the only thing this card really does is it lets you yard Daki maybe, and then bring himself out so you have 5 levels of synchro material so you can bypass some of the cards in your extra deck. But why do that when you're not really doing anything special? Like, if this card lets you discard any card, or at least any zombie, it could be used for other setup. If it lets you go for non-Mayakashi cards, then it could be a decent zombie card in general. Like, this card would be playable, even if it just said you can only summon zombies for the rest of the turn. But no, it locks you so hard into Mayakashi and it doesn't really do anything in particular for the theme. Therefore, I decided not to play any copies of this card. And there you have it. An in-depth introduction to Mayakashi, a severely underappreciated strategy that debuted in Hidden Summoners. Let me know down below what you think about the strategy. Is this something that you may want to try now that you've been introduced to the theme? And if you've played with this strategy and you notice things or know of things that I didn't mention here, I'd love to hear those down below as well. And if you want to see the deck in a bit more context, don't forget to click that eye card in the top right-hand corner where I've released simultaneously obviously with this video, Mayakashi Control as a deck profile, and then if this is in the future or something, you may see other decks that have come out for this theme as well. So thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JDGaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.